If you've ever built a spreadsheet that works, but still looks like a rough draft, you're not alone. Over the next few minutes, we're going to make this spreadsheet pretty. And by that, I mean both visually appealing and easier to use. Today, we're using this simple expense tracker, but this works for any spreadsheet, home or work. We're not doing anything fancy. We're just making it clean, readable, and consistent. The first thing we're going to do is take this date column and we're going to move it all the way to the left of the item column. And the reason we're going to do that is it makes it easier later for sorting and doing totals by month along with other things. In Excel, there's always more than one way to do just about everything. And today I'm going to show you two ways to move this column. The first way is to come over here to column C at the top. Right next to the C, you see the arrow pointing down. We're going to click, and that selects the entire column. And then we're going to right click and come down to cut. We don't want to choose copy because that will create a duplicate of the date column, and that's not what we want. We want to actually move it. So we're going to cut it from here. So we click cut, and you see that's selected and has the lines moving around it. So we know that's what's selected. And then we come all the way over here and we select column A, just like we did with column C. And then we're going to right click and we're going to come down to insert cut cells. And now the date column is all the way on the left, exactly where we want it. So that's the first way. Select the column, cut, select the column that you want it to appear before, and choose insert cut cells. Now, I want to show you the second way, but before we do that, we're going to do undo. And you're probably familiar with undo. Up here at the top, you can undo cut cells. You can click this, or you can use Control Z, and it tells you that it's Control Z right there in the little tip that pops up. But I'm going to use Control Z, and it moves it back. And then I'm going to hit escape to deselect the column because we're going to do this from the start. So now that we have column where everything goes back to the way it was before, I'm going to again select column C, again, straight down arrow. So I've selected column C. And if you move the pointer to just the right spot right here, you see we have the cross, the arrows pointing up and down and the arrows pointing left and right. That tells you that it's in move mode. So that's where you want to see. If you see this white plus, that's not what you want. If you're up here still, you will see the straight down arrow, also not what you want. So right here where we have the cross, we're going to click and hold, and we're going to hold down shift, and we're going to drag this. And you see this line appears, and wherever this line is where it's going to put this column. I'm still holding down shift and holding down the left mouse button, and we're going to drag it over here, and you see where the line is. When I let up on the left mouse button, it moves it over, and I can release the shift key at that point. And now this date column is exactly where we want it. So that's two ways that you can move a column from one place to another, and you can choose whichever one you want. Like I said, there's always two ways to do just about everything in Excel. At least two ways, right? The next thing you may notice is that we have cells like this right here with streaming service, and you can see it's streaming service up here, but it doesn't fit in the cell. It ends right here with the S in service. And down here we have hash marks, which is just Excel telling us that the dates are too wide for the width we have on the date column right now. And we see it over here as well with entertainment and with auto maintenance. Now there's an easy way to fix this so that you can see the entire column, all of the information. You can see all of auto maintenance, for example, in the cells. And what we're going to do is come up here to the corner where this little triangle is, and we're going to click, and that selects your entire worksheet. And then you just come over here. Between any of these columns will work. As long as you see this left and right arrow and a vertical bar, you can do it anywhere. I'm going to just come over here to between columns C and D. And you just, as long as you see this left and right arrow with the bar, double click, and you have everything fitting the column exactly. The widest thing in the column is what Excel uses to decide how wide the column should be. It's called AutoFit, and everything is now readable. I don't necessarily want my notes column, though, to be this wide, because the longer my notes get, the wider this column will get, and we don't necessarily want that. So now let's say you don't want this notes column to just get wider and wider if you get longer and longer notes. There's a really easy way to handle that. Make it narrower and still see everything inside it. To do that, we're going to just select the notes column. So up here, column E, select just column E. And then we're going to click this and drag it back. I'm just going to come to about right here. And I'm just guessing, so it's okay. We still have column E selected. We're going to come up here to wrap text. And what this will do is take these the longer cells, like lunch with coworkers after meeting and morning coffee before work, and it wraps them. And maybe you think this is a little bit too narrow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it out just a little bit. And I think that looks pretty good. So now we have the notes column, everything wraps to this width, and it'll appear on multiple lines if that's what's needed, or it will just appear on one line like weekly grocery run right here. So again, so the notes column won't just get very long as you type more information in there. So you can truly have notes and add as much information in there as you like. You may also have already noticed that this lunch with coworkers after meeting has all this extra space up here. And what you can do, same thing we did with the AutoFit before, but you can also do it on rows. So we're going to come down here. You don't have to do it in any particular spot, but we're going to just double click, and it shrinks the height of each of these rows to match the data that's inside it. So on an individual, each row will only be as tall as it needs to be. The next thing I want to do to make this easier to read is I'm going to make this header row, date, item, cost, category, and notes. I want to make it stand out a little bit more. And so I click and hold the left mouse button and drag to select multiple cells. And then I come up here and I'm going to choose bold. And I'm just going to click away from it so you can see it. It already looks a lot better, right? But we can do even more. Next thing we're going to do is take and select these columns once again, just like we did when we made them all bold. And we are going to change the background color, the fill color. And you're going to probably want to have it be a lighter color because we have black text. And you can choose whatever color you like. I'm just going to click this one, this blue color. And you can see it already looks better. If you don't like blue, that's perfectly okay. You can come up here and choose maybe a plum color. Again, it looks better already. But today I am going to choose this. I'm going to choose this dark teal color. Oh, well, this isn't exactly what I wanted to do. One thing you'll find in Excel is if you don't reselect, or if you're not selecting what you think you should select, you might change the background color on something you didn't intend, or you might change something you didn't intend just in general. But this is easy to fix. What we can do is come back up here and we're going to choose no fill. You could also undo, but we're going to choose no fill because I wanted to show you, again, there's 2 ways at least to do everything. We could have done undo, but I'm just going to actually go up and change it to no fill. And now I'm going to do it the right way, and the way I should have done it originally, and select everything and make it this dark teal color like I wanted to originally. And there we go. So now we have header rows with bold text and a color, and it already looks really good. There's still a few more things we can do to make this even more readable and usable. And the next thing I want to do is take column C, this is the cost column, and we are going to, these are dollar amounts, so we are going to make them dollars. There's two different options. You can choose the accounting option, which is what you'll usually see in the corporate world or in businesses, and it aligns the dollar signs all on the one side and puts the amounts next to them. Or you can choose currency, which just brings that dollar sign over to the right up against the amount. You can choose either one. I personally typically just pick the accounting format. That's what I'm used to looking at. There is no difference. This is just what Excel is showing you when you look at the cell. Behind that is 3.5 for 350 or 14.99 for $14.99. So behind that is the actual value, but Excel is just showing you the dollars so that you see it as dollars. And one other thing I wanted to do this, because nothing's really permanent. I originally typed cost in this header. I don't want it to be cost. I want to change it to amount. So I'm just going to type amount and press enter. And now I've changed the header name to amount from cost. And I like that a lot better as well. At this point, there's just a couple more things I want to do. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of break this up so it doesn't look like these light gray lines are just Excel's way of showing you where the cells are, but we can make them stand out a little bit more and make it a little, again, more visually appealing. I am going to start up here with date, come all the way across the notes and go all the way down to the bottom of my data. And then I'm going to come up here. You can add borders. And this right now is just selected bottom border, but if you click this little arrow pointing down, you see there's a lot of options. And in fact, you can completely customize it by going into more borders and it opens a window. But we're not going to worry about that today. We are just going to click all borders. And I'm just going to click off, deselect everything so you can kind of see a little bit better. You see how everything has a black border around it, and it looks, again, separates everything just a little bit more to make it easier to see where each cell is and where the information is. And to make the header stand out, I'm going to do one other thing with borders. I select the header row again, and I am going to come down to thick outside borders because I kind of like how that looks. And now we have a thick outside border around the header and thinner black borders in the rest of the data down below. So at this point, it looks really good. I'm going to just kind of scroll so you can see it. And one thing you may notice when I do that is the headers at the top disappear because I'm scrolling down and row 1 where the headers are is gone. Well, we do not have to let that happen. You can click up here in the cell, and then we're going to come over to the View tab, and we're going to come over to Freeze Panes. And what this does is you can freeze rows, you can freeze columns as well, but we are just going to freeze the top row. So I'm going to click Freeze Top Row, and now you can see that the top row has been frozen. You see how this gray line got just a little bit darker. I'm going to unfreeze it. You can unfreeze if you decide you don't like that. You can unfreeze panes. It unfreezes everything. But again, we're just going to freeze the top row and watch how that line gets darker. And so it's an indicator that this row that is frozen above here. And now if I scroll down, the top row stays. And you can scroll down as far as your data goes, and you can still see what each of these columns means. So you can, and in this case, it's probably kind of obvious this is a date, but if you get bigger spreadsheets or other information, it may not always be obvious what that information was, and this just makes it a lot easier to use. And there you have it. Just to recap quick, we moved the date column that was over here in column C, we moved it to column A, and it bumped item and amount over to the right. We used AutoFit on the columns to fix the spacing, And then we shrunk down column E so that the notes were not just going to get longer and longer the more notes we put in one cell, and added wrap text. Let me jump back over to that. We clicked on wrap text to allow the text to wrap to 2 lines or even 3 if needed. All the headers are clear, easy to read. And again, you can make the background color whatever you like. You could leave it as white. You could make it gray. Whatever you find easiest to read and look at. We changed the amount column to show dollars. So we identify it as being a dollar amount. And we also changed the header from cost to amount, again, just to be a little bit more clear on what it is. There's nothing wrong with cost. Whatever makes sense to you, but for me, amount made more sense, so I decided to change it. And then we froze the top row so that when we scroll the data, you will always see the header labels at the top, and you can still see all of your data. You could scroll. I only have 20 rows here, but if you had more rows, you just could continue scrolling to the bottom, and the header would stay there all the way through. As you can see, we did not do anything very fancy. We just made it a lot easier to use and look at and read. And just to remind you where we started from, here's where we started. And here's the finished, easier to read, easier to use spreadsheet after the changes we made. If you want to practice using the expense tracker that I started with, I've included a link in the description below. You can download it and walk through all of the changes we did today, or just play and do things on your own. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining, and I wish you smooth sailing.